The alarm began with a single sharp tone, like a knife cutting through the silence of space. Then came the signal, urgent, desperate, impossible to ignore. Across the galactic medical network, a message repeated again and again. Emergency quarantine declared. Alien nursery ship in distress. 200 cubs infected. Unknown illness. Requesting immediate assistance. The words carried fear even through the mechanical voice. Hundreds of ships heard it. Thousands of medics saw it flash across their screens. But one by one, they turned away. This was not just any nursery ship. It carried the future of the Veari, a proud and ancient species known for their wisdom and long lives. Their cubs were rare and precious. 200 in one place was not only unusual, it was irreplaceable. And now every single one was sick. No one wanted to go near. The disease had no name. The scans showed strange patterns in the blood. Alien doctors feared it could spread to their own people. Their leaders whispered of plague, of fire, of cleansing. Quarantine was not a safe zone anymore. It was a cage waiting for the lock to close forever. But among all those who looked away, one human did not. Dr. Aaron Cole sat alone in a small medical station on the edge of human territory. He was not famous. He was not rich. He was only one man with a stubborn heart and too many sleepless nights. The message lit up his console, casting a red glow across his tired face. He read the words once. Then again, 200 alien children left to die. Cole stood. Humans were not the oldest race in the galaxy. They were not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most advanced. But humans had one reputation that had spread across the stars. They went where others would not. They endured what others refused to face. And sometimes, when no one else would step forward, a human would. Cole tapped the comms. His voice was steady, though inside he felt the heavy weight of what he was choosing. This is Dr. Aaron Cole. I accept the call. There was silence on the other end, followed by disbelief. The alien dispatcher asked again, certain he had misheard. A human doctor, alone, walking into the center of a plague? Yes, Cole repeated. Send me the coordinates. The nursery ship was already locked in orbit above a barren moon, sealed tight under full quarantine protocols. When Cole's small shuttle approached, the escorts kept their weapons trained on him. They gave him one chance to turn back. He did not. He docked with a nursery ship. The hatch opened, and the smell of sterilized air mixed with something heavier. Fear. On the other side of a transparent barrier, alien medics waited. They wore bright protective suits, but their eyes showed panic. You are the human? One asked, voice shaking. I am the doctor, Cole replied. The medics stepped aside. None of them entered the quarantine chamber. None dared. Through the glass wall, Cole could see rows of small beds. On each bed lay a cub. Their bodies were thin and weak, their skin marked with rashes. Some shivered. Others were too still. The sound of faint, shallow breathing filled the chamber like whispers of fading life. 200 of them. Cole tightened the seals on his suit. His heart beat louder than the alarm that had first called him here. He thought of his own childhood, of hospitals, of watching helpless parents stand beside silent beds. He had promised himself long ago that if he had the power to stand between life and death, he would not run. He walked through the airlock. The heavy door closed behind him with a final hiss. The cub's eyes followed him, though weakly. They had been told no one would come. They had been told the galaxy had abandoned them. Yet here was a human, stepping into the place everyone else feared. From the observation deck, alien leaders watched. Some murmured he was reckless. Others whispered he was already dead. But deep down, they felt something stir, something they had not felt in many long years. Hope. Inside, Cole stood still for a moment, breathing the filtered air of his suit, scanning the rows of fragile life before him. He had no cure. He had no plan. All he had was himself, his training, and the stubborn refusal to let children die alone. All right, little ones, he whispered, though none could hear through the helmet. You're not alone anymore. The alarms continued to echo through the ship, a sound of warning and despair. But in the center of that sound stood one human. And for the first time since the illness began, the nursery was not only a place of fear. It was a battlefield, and Dr. Aaron Cole had just stepped onto it. Dr. Aaron Cole stood in the middle of the quarantine chamber. The silence pressed down on him, broken only by the faint hum of life support systems and the weak, ragged breaths of the alien cubs. 200 tiny lives surrounded him, and every second mattered. He walked to the first row of beds. The cubs were small, no larger than human toddlers, though their skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, shades of silver and pale blue. Normally, Veari cubs were loud, restless, playful. But here, all was still. Their bright eyes were dim, their voices hushed by sickness. Cole placed a scanner over the nearest cub. The machine flickered with symbols, struggling to process the strange biology. Temperature, critical. Oxygen levels, low. Heartbeat, irregular. The cub gave a weak cough, its chest rattling like dry leaves. Cole whispered, "Hold on, little one, I've got you." Outside the glass wall, alien medics and leaders watched. Their faces were tense, their voices low. Some believed the human was wasting his time. Others feared he would carry the illness back to the galaxy. But none of them dared to enter. Only Cole stood inside. He moved quickly, his hands steady though his stomach twisted. Each bed told the same story. Fever, rash, weak breathing. But the details were strange. The disease spread fast, too fast. Every cub showed nearly identical symptoms, as if something had struck them all at the same time. That was not how most illnesses worked. Cole paused at the tent bed. This cub was worse than the rest. Its skin was hot to the touch, even through his gloves. The scanner beeped an alarm. The child's heart was failing. Cole reached for a vial of broad-spectrum medicine from his kit. It was meant for human emergencies, but it might ease the fever. The alien leaders shouted through the comms, "Do not interfere. Human drugs will kill them." Cole ignored them. He injected the tiniest dose, calibrated with shaky math in his head. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, the cub's breathing steadied. The fever dropped slightly. The beeping slowed. Cole exhaled. One life bought a few more hours. It wasn't a cure, but it was a start. He kept moving. 20 cubs. 50 cubs. 100. Every scan told him the same story. Something unnatural. Something that didn't match any medical database. He pulled up records from both human and alien libraries. Nothing matched. He stopped at one cub who was awake. Barely. Its eyes met his, cloudy but aware. The small hand twitched, reaching for him. Cole bent low, letting the child press its hand weakly against the glass of his helmet. The cub's lips moved, whispering in its native tongue. Cole didn't understand the words, but he understood the meaning. A plea, a cry for help. His chest tightened. "I won't let you down," he murmured. Hours passed inside the chamber. Sweat collected inside his suit. His oxygen alarm blinked yellow, reminding him that every minute here cost him dearly. But he did not stop. When he finally stood back, he saw the full picture. 200 patients, all infected with the same unknown sickness. The disease had no pattern of natural spread. It was too clean, too synchronized. This was not random. Someone had done this. Cole's mind raced. Was it an accident? A contamination? Or something darker? An attack? He pushed the thought aside. Right now, the cause did not matter. Survival mattered. He set up a small lab in the corner of the chamber. Machines hummed, analyzing blood samples. Under the lens, he saw something strange. Tiny dark particles moving inside the blood, almost alive. They twisted and swirled, breaking cells apart. Not bacteria. Not virus. Something new. Cole rubbed his tired eyes. "What are you?" he muttered. The door to the observation deck hissed open. A tall Veari leader stepped forward, robes heavy with authority. His voice echoed through the comms. "Human, your effort is meaningless. These cubs cannot be saved. The council debates whether to destroy the nursery to protect the galaxy." Cole's blood ran cold. Destroy the ship? With all the children still alive inside? He turned sharply toward the observation glass, his voice hard. "If you do that, you kill 200 innocents. And you will never know what this sickness is. Do you want the galaxy to face it again, unprepared?" The leader hesitated, eyes narrowing. Silence followed. Cole returned to his work, heart pounding. He knew the truth. The aliens outside wanted safety. They wanted certainty. But he could not let fear decide. The cubs stirred weakly in their beds, some whimpering, some barely moving at all. Their lives hung by a thread, and he was the only one holding it. Cole sat down beside his makeshift lab. His body ached, his mind screamed for rest, but he kept his eyes fixed on the dark particles under the lens. They moved like shadows with purpose. They were the enemy now, and if the galaxy wanted to abandon these children, then it would be one human doctor standing between life and death. Inside the quarantine chamber, the alarm lights flashed red. Outside, leaders argued in hushed, fearful tones. But inside, Cole leaned closer to the scanner and whispered himself, "Not on my watch." The battle for the cubs' lives had begun. The walls of the quarantine chamber felt closer with every hour. Dr. Aaron Cole stood hunched over his console, scanning blood samples again and again. The dark particles twisted like smoke under the lens, splitting cells apart with silent cruelty. He knew what he was looking at was no natural sickness, but proving it, stopping it, that was the impossible part. Outside the thick glass, the council gathered in the observation deck. Their voices carried to the comm system, sharp and tense. "We cannot wait any longer," one elder declared. His scaled hands trembled as he spoke. "The infection spreads too quickly. If it escapes this ship, it will reach colonies. Millions could die." Another voice, higher and urgent. "And what are the cubs? They are our children. They are our future. If we abandon them, our bloodline ends here." The chamber filled with their arguing voices. Cole didn't turn from his work, but his ears caught every word. His jaw tightened. They were not debating medicine anymore. They were debating life and death, and the weight of their decision pressed down on him like a mountain. The air in his suit grew hotter, sticky with sweat. His oxygen gauge blinked again, warning of the hours he was burning. Cole silenced the alarm. He could not afford distraction. He injected another weakened cub with a microdose of the experimental mixture. The child's fever eased slightly, but no more. It wasn't enough. His hand shook for the first time since he entered. "Dr. Cole," the voice of the council leader came through, deep and commanding. "Your effort is admirable, but you are delaying the inevitable. We cannot risk this contagion. Unless you deliver a solution within one cycle, the nursery ship will be destroyed." The word struck him harder than any physical blow. Destroyed. The word echoed in his head. They would turn this chamber, these 200 fragile lives, into ashes. He stood still, staring at the rows of cubs. Some whimpered softly, some too weak to even cry. 200 tiny bodies clinging to existence. He imagined pressing a button to erase them, ending all their suffering in fire. The idea twisted his stomach. "No," Cole said quietly at first, then louder, his voice cutting through the comms. "You don't understand. You cannot buy safety with slaughter. If this is engineered, if someone made this disease, destroying these cubs only hides the truth. The galaxy will face it again." Silence followed, but he could sense their unease. Cole turned back to his scanner. He forced himself to breathe slow, steady. The fear clawing at his chest threatened to take him, but he shoved it aside. He could not falter. Not here. Not now. The cub on the table stirred weakly. Its silver-blue eyes fluttered open. Cole leaned close. "You're stronger than they think," he whispered. "We just need more time." The cub's hand twitched, reaching toward his glove. Even half-conscious, it clung to him. That small gesture was enough to steady his heart. The council began again, their voices rising like a storm. "Time is a luxury we do not have," one shouted. "Every hour increases the risk. Do we sacrifice our worlds for 200 children?" Another argued. "Without children, there will be no worlds left to save." The chamber shook faintly as ships repositioned outside. Weapons were being readied. Cole knew the signs. He had seen them before in human wars. Leaders preparing to make the unthinkable decision. Pressure mounted in his chest. He needed results. Not in days. Not in hours. Now. He turned to his lab, reviewing every reading again. Fever, rash, cellular collapse. Always the same. But then, something different. One cub had survived longer than the others, resisting the decline. Its blood showed the same dark particles, but weaker, muted. Cole's pulse quickened. This one child was the key. If he could isolate what made its body fight back, he could build a treatment. He worked furiously, extracting samples, comparing them under the scanner. His eyes burned, his muscles ached, but he refused to stop. Each passing second, he imagined the Council's finger hovering over a button, ready to consign the ship to flames. A sudden clang on the glass startled him. An alien soldier had slammed a fist against the barrier. His face twisted in anger. His voice rang through the comms. "Stop this madness. Human, leave now while you can. We will end this plague before it ends us." Cole turned sharply, his eyes like steel. "If you want to kill them, you'll have to kill me first. Because as long as I'm here, I will fight for them." The soldier recoiled, but the fury in his eyes did not fade. Others whispered around him, torn between fear and respect. Cole returned to his work, more determined than ever. His hands moved like machines, guided by instinct and desperation. The data began to take shape. A pattern emerged, fragile, incomplete, but real. A way forward. Exhaustion clawed at him. His vision blurred. His oxygen gauge turned red. But in the quiet, he could hear the cub's faint breaths, and it drove him on. Outside, the Council argued. Inside, Cole fought against time itself. For the first time since the alarm had sounded, he felt something stir inside his chest. Not certainty, not safety, but possibility. A chance. He looked at the tiny survivor, the one cub holding back the shadow in its blood. "You're going to help save them all," he whispered. And with that, the pressure around him no longer felt like a mountain crushing him. It felt like fire, driving him forward. The battle was far from over. But Cole had found his first weapon. Dr. Aaron Cole barely noticed the ache in his legs as he bent over the microscope for the 100th time. Hours inside the quarantine chamber blurred into one long, feverish stretch. His oxygen alarms blinked in angry red, demanding attention, but he ignored them. 200 alien cubs surrounded him, their weak breaths rising and falling like fragile tides. Every cough, every whimper reminded him of the countdown he was fighting. Then he saw it, on the scanner, the dark particles dance again, swimming through the blood sample. But this time, something was different. One cub's cells were fighting back. Not many, just a few, but enough to slow the infection. The particles latched on, tried to break them apart, but the cells resisted. They shimmered faintly, glowing with some hidden strength. Cole leaned closer, his breath fogging the inside of his helmet. "There you are," he whispered. "You've been hiding from me." The cub that had given the sample stirred on the bed beside him. Its small chest rose and fell in shaky rhythm, but it was alive, holding on longer than the rest. Cole reached out, brushing his gloved hand gently across its silver-blue skin. "You're not just surviving," he murmured. "You're teaching me how to win." He worked quickly, isolating the resisting cells, comparing them to the others. The pattern became clear. This cub's body carried something unique. A rare protein, a natural defense. Not enough to cure them all, but enough to give him a weapon. His mind raced. If he could replicate the effect, if he could create a serum using the same protein, it might slow the disease in the others. But then, a cold thought struck him. This was too precise, too uniform. The infection hadn't spread randomly from cub to cub. It had struck them all at once, overwhelming every body except the one with natural resistance. Cole froze, the realization sinking deep. This wasn't an accident. Someone had designed this. The disease was not born of nature. It was a weapon. The comms crackled to life, pulling him from his thoughts. An alien voice, sharp and cold, filled the chamber. "Dr. Cole, the Council has made its decision. If you do not produce a cure by the next cycle, the nursery ship will be destroyed." Cole's chest tightened. He looked at the cubs, their fragile bodies shaking with fever. 200 innocents, and now he knew the truth. They weren't victims of chance. They were targets. He slammed his fist against the lab table, startling the medics watching outside. "Don't you see?" he shouted into the comms. This was engineered. Someone did this to them. If you destroy this ship, you destroy the only proof. You'll never know who your enemy is until they strike again. Gasps rippled through the observation deck. The council leader's voice trembled. "You claim sabotage?" "I don't claim," Cole snapped. "I know. And if you kill these cubs, you let the Real killers walk free." Silence followed, but he could feel the weight of suspicion settling over the council. The truth was too heavy to ignore. Cole turned back to his work. His hands moved fast, drawing blood from the surviving cub, mixing it with carefully measured solutions. He worked like a man possessed, every movement sharp, desperate. His body screamed for rest, but his mind burned with fire. At one point, the cub reached up, tiny fingers pressing weakly against his glove. Its cloudy eyes met his, and in that moment, Cole felt the full force of its silent plea, not just for itself, but for all 200. "I hear you," he whispered. "I'll fight for you." Outside, the alien leaders argued again. Some shouted for immediate destruction, unwilling to risk the weapon escaping. Others demanded an investigation. Tension thickened like smoke, but Cole shut their voices out. He loaded the first vial of experimental serum and injected it into a cub with dangerously high fever. Minutes crawled past. Then, slowly, the cub's breathing steadied. The rash on its skin faded slightly. It was working. Not a cure yet, but a start. Cole's pulse thundered in his ears. He moved from bed to bed, testing carefully, recording every change. Some cubs responded. Others didn't. Progress was fragile, uneven, but progress nonetheless. When he looked up, he saw the alien soldiers outside staring in shock. Even the council leader leaned forward, unable to deny what was happening. The human was turning the tide. Cole's chest heaved as exhaustion threatened to drag him down, but his eyes blazed with determination. He had uncovered the truth. This was no plague, but a deliberate attack. And now he had the first weapon to fight it. He turned to the observation deck, voice hoarse but steady. "You can destroy this ship if you want. You can kill these cubs and call it mercy. But know this, whoever created this disease will strike again. And if you silence the only witness, you doom us all." The council did not answer. Their silence was louder than any words. Cole staggered back to his lab, his vision blurring. The cubs stirred faintly, their weak cries echoing through the chamber. Each sound cut through his exhaustion, sharpening his resolve. He wiped sweat from his brow, muttering to himself, "This isn't just medicine anymore. This is war." The alarm still pulsed red. The cubs still hovered on the edge of death. But now, Cole had something he hadn't before. A discovery, a weapon, and a reason to fight harder than ever. The alarm still pulsed inside the nursery ship, steady and merciless. Red lights washed over rows of weak, feverish cubs. 200 lives hung in balance, their soft whimpers echoing in the sealed chamber. And one human doctor, sweating, exhausted, but unbroken, fought to keep them from slipping into silence. Dr. Aaron Cole's eyes stung from hours without rest. His oxygen warning blinked in angry red, demanding retreat, but he refused to leave. He bent over his lab again, blood samples glowing faintly under scanners. Each flicker of the dark. Parasitic particles reminded him this was no natural illness. This was war in microscopic form. Cole had already seen what others didn't dare to admit. This disease was engineered, crafted by a hand with intent. Someone had poisoned the nursery deliberately. That knowledge burned in him, but it also gave him focus. If this was made, it could be unmade. He glanced at the cub whose blood resisted the infection better than the others. That tiny survivor was his key. The unique protein in its cells slowed the sickness. Not enough to cure, but enough to give him a direction. He worked feverishly, mixing samples, testing reactions, searching for combinations that could replicate the resistance. Every second felt like a stone crushing his chest. He was not just fighting the sickness. He was fighting the council outside, their patience thinning with each cycle. At any moment, they might choose the easy answer. Destruction. The comms crackled. Dr. Cole, the council leader's voice boomed. Your progress is noted, but you must understand, we cannot risk the spread of this weapon. If you fail, the Cubs will be released from their suffering, and the galaxy will be safe. Cole clenched his fists. He wanted to scream. Safe? How could anyone call it safety when the true enemy remained free? He bit back the anger, forcing his voice calm. Give me more time. I'm close. Destroy this ship, and you destroy your only chance of survival. The silence that followed was heavy. He didn't know if his words bought him an hour or a day. He only knew he had to move faster. The breaking point. Cole prepared another serum, carefully diluting the protein mixture. His hands shook, not from fear, but from fatigue. He hadn't eaten in nearly 20 hours. He hadn't rested, but the Cubs needed him. He injected the new serum into a cub burning with fever. Minutes stretched long. The child's skin twitched, the rash spreading, then slowly fading. Breathing eased. The fever broke. Cole exhaled hard, relief surging through him. One more life held back from the edge. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. He staggered to the next bed, then the next, injecting carefully. Some cubs responded immediately. Others faltered. A few did not improve at all. The serum bought time, but it wasn't enough to save them all. Not yet. Cole's body screamed for rest, but his mind refused. He adjusted formulas, tested ratios, tried again and again. His world shrank to the rhythm of syringes, scanners, and the faint cries of children too weak to speak. Outside the glass, alien soldiers shifted restlessly. Their weapons gleamed in the dim light. Cole knew they weren't guarding him. They were waiting for the order to end this. Every shadow of movement reminded him. His time was a rope, fraying strand by strand. The council divided. On the observation deck, alien leaders argued again. Cole could hear fragments through the comms. This is reckless, one said. Even if he slows the sickness, what then? We cannot unleash this human experiment into the galaxy. Another voice countered, fierce with emotion. And if he succeeds? If he saves them, what will history say of us if we chose fire instead of hope? The council leader tried to silence them, but their fear was cracking. Cole knew it. Fear was the oldest enemy in medicine. It killed faster than disease. He shut out their voices and pressed on. His hands moved with stubborn rhythm. He didn't have the luxury of doubt. The human breaking. The hours blurred. Cole's knees nearly gave out as he reached the last row of beds. His vision doubled. His breath shallow inside the helmet. Oxygen dropped to critical. He collapsed beside a cub, syringe still in hand. For a moment, the thought crept in, maybe they're right. Maybe I can't save them all. A weak sound pulled him back. The cub beside him whimpered, a soft, broken cry. Tiny fingers reached toward his glove, trembling. Even at death's edge, it reached for him. Cole's chest tightened. Tears burned his eyes. He forced himself up, clinging to that tiny hand. No, he whispered hoarsely. I won't quit. Not while you're still fighting. The fire inside him roared again. Humans were not the strongest in the galaxy, not the smartest. But when pushed to the edge, they endured. And in that moment, Cole embodied the truth every species whispered in dark corners. Humans did not stop. The turning tide. With renewed focus, Cole adjusted the serum once more, pushing the protein to its limit. He tested on the weakest cubs, the ones who had almost no chance. Slowly, impossibly, some of them stabilized. Hope spread like fire. The medics outside pressed against the glass, whispering in disbelief. Soldiers lowered their weapons, eyes wide. Even the council fell silent. Cole injected the final cub in a row, then slumped against the wall, chest heaving. The cub stirred, fever easing. He had done it again. Not perfect, not a cure, but enough to keep them alive. Enough to show it could be done. The comms lit with urgent voices. He's slowing the plague. He's buying them time. The council leader's voice broke through, sharp but shaken. One human, holding back death itself. Cole wiped sweat from his brow, lifting his head. His voice was hoarse, but clear. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. I can stop this, but not if you burn them. Not if you kill the proof. He looked at the cubs, their tiny chests rising and falling with steadier rhythm. They are your future, and I will not let them die. The race against time. Hours turned into a blur of labor. Cole refined the serum, building batch after batch. His suit's oxygen reached near failure, but he refused to leave. Every step he took across the chamber was heavy, but each injection gave him strength. The cubs slowly began to recover, breathing easier, their rashes fading. Weak eyes opened, some gazing at him with newfound light. The silence of the nursery filled with faint, fragile sounds. Small cries, soft murmurs. Life returning. Cole collapsed at the center of the chamber, surrounded by cubs he had kept alive through sheer will. His body shook, his voice a rasp. I bought them time. Now I need to win the race. Outside, alien leaders stared in awe. Some whispered words they never thought they would say. The human, he's protecting them better than we ever could. And somewhere deep inside the council, fear shifted into something else. Respect. The final push. Cole forced himself upright, staggering back to his lab. He knew the truth. This wasn't victory yet. The disease was engineered, intelligent, adaptive. It would strike again, stronger. He had slowed it, but he had to find the final key. He clenched his fists, staring at the swirling dark particles under his scanner. His voice hardened. You tried to kill them, but you didn't count on me. The race was far from over. But for the first time, Aaron Cole wasn't chasing death. Death was chasing him, and he intended to win. Dr. Aaron Cole's body ached as if every muscle had been beaten with iron. His eyes burned from exhaustion, and his lungs struggled against the thinning oxygen in his suit. The quarantine chamber was a furnace of pressure and fatigue. Yet he kept moving. Rows of alien cubs surrounded him, fragile bodies slowly stabilizing under his makeshift serum. For the first time since stepping aboard the nursery ship, he felt the faint stirrings of victory. But victory was not enough. He had slowed the sickness. He had bought time. What he needed now was finality. A cure. He leaned against the lab bench, staring at the blood samples under his scanner. The dark, writhing particles swam like shadows with purpose, twisting and tearing cells apart. They weren't mindless. They weren't random. They adapted, shifting whenever he struck them with a new formula. His serum weakened them, but did not kill them. It was like fighting fire with damp cloth. It stalled the flames, but the embers remained. Cole rubbed his temples, forcing his weary brain to focus. There had to be a way. Somewhere in the data, in the blood, in the surviving cubs, strange protein, the answer waited. He remembered the cub's tiny hand against his glove, the silent plea in its eyes. He could not fail them. Outside the glass, alien soldiers and medics whispered among themselves. Some pressed their hands to the barrier, watching as the humans staggered through exhaustion. They had called him reckless, doomed, a fool. Yet now, as the cubs stirred with life, their whispers had changed. Respect crept into their voices, mixed with awe. One human alone was holding back extinction. The council leader's voice broke through the calms, steady but quieter than before. Dr. Cole, reports confirm your serum is keeping them alive. But how long can it last? We cannot delay forever. You must finish this. Cole's lips cracked into a humorless smile. I'm well aware. I'm not here to stall death. I'm here to beat it. He injected another cub, watching closely as the fever receded. He recorded every reaction, his notes shaky but precise. A pattern emerged. The serum worked best when the body's own resistance was strongest. But not every cub had that gift. He needed a way to give them that strength artificially, to make every body fight as the survivor had. He ran the survivor's blood through every analysis his portable lab could perform. Finally, after endless hours, he found something. A hidden fragment in the protein, tiny, unstable, but powerful. It wasn't just resistance. It was instruction. The fragment told cells how to fight. His pulse quickened. If he could isolate that fragment, replicate it, and bind it to his serum, the cubs' bodies could learn to resist. It wouldn't just stall the sickness. It could destroy it. Cole's hands shook as he began the delicate process. Every motion felt heavier than stone, his arms like lead, but he forced precision. He whispered to himself, steadying his breath, "Don't slip now, Aaron. Not when you're this close." Time bled away in silence. The alarm still pulsed red. Oxygen still dropped, but all his senses narrowed to the work before him. He drew the fragment, stabilized it with human nanomedicine, and fused it to the serum. The mixture glowed faintly, brighter than before, almost alive. He stared at the vial, chest tight. This was it, the moment of truth. He crossed to the weakest cub, one who had not stirred in hours. Its breathing was shallow, its skin dull. Cole knelt beside the bed, pressing the syringe into the tiny arm. "Stay with me," he whispered. The serum flowed. For long minutes, nothing happened. Then the cub gasped, its chest rising fuller, stronger. The rash faded. The heartbeat steadied. Its eyes opened dim at first, then brightening with sudden clarity. Cole's breath caught. He placed a hand against the child's chest, feeling the steady rhythm. "Yes," he said hoarsely. "Yes, that's it." He stumbled to the next cub, then the next. Each injection brought similar results. Fever breaking, color returning, breathing stronger. The serum wasn't stalling anymore. It was erasing the sickness. One by one, the cubs began to recover. Outside the glass, alien medics cried out in disbelief. Soldiers lowered their weapons, their fear replaced by stunned awe. The council chamber erupted in murmurs. The leader himself leaned forward, his usually stern face shaken. "The human," someone whispered. "He's curing them." Cole moved through the rows like a man possessed, though his body threatened collapse. His vision blurred, his knees buckled. But he forced himself onward. Each cub, he saved fueled him for the next. Their small voices began to rise, soft cries, weak but alive. The silence of despair gave way to the sound of life. At the final bed, he collapsed to his knees, barely able to hold the syringe. His hands trembled violently. He could barely see the needle, but he forced it steady, pressed it into the last cub's arm, and released the cure. Minutes passed like hours. Then the child stirred, eyelids fluttering open. A faint sound escaped its lips, a soft, clear cry. Cole fell back against the wall, tears burning his eyes. He looked around him at the cubs, breathing, alive, their weak voices filling the chamber. For the first time since the alarm began, the nursery ship felt alive again. His body gave out, exhaustion slamming him to the floor. He lay there, Sue alarmed screaming, but he couldn't help the faint smile tugging at his lips. He had done it. Not stalled, not delayed. Beaten. The comms filled with voices. Impossible. He saved them. One human. The council leader's voice trembled as he spoke. "Dr. Cole, the cub's live. You have done what none of us believed possible." Cole managed a rasping laugh. "You're welcome." Medics flooded the chamber, finally daring to enter now that the danger had passed. They rushed to the cubs, checking vitals, confirming what Cole already knew. The sickness was breaking apart. The engineered plague had been undone. As hands lifted him from the floor, his vision dimmed. He heard faint cheers, cries of relief, whispers of a word he did not understand but recognized by tone alone. Guardian. Before darkness claimed him, Cole's last thought was of the cub's tiny hands clutching his glove, the silent trust they had placed in him. That trust had carried him through when his strength faltered. And in that trust, he had found the cure. The galaxy would later record the moment as a turning point. A weapon had been unleashed upon innocence, but a human had stood in its path, not because of power or wealth or command, but because he refused to walk away. One doctor against death. One human against despair. And in the quiet heart of the nursery ship, surrounded by 200 alien children, who now breathed freely, history whispered its verdict. Humans did not quit. The silence after victory was heavier than the battle itself. The nursery ship, once filled with alarms and the whispers of dying children, now carried the fragile sounds of life. Soft cries, faint laughter, and the steady rhythm of breathing. The red warning lights dimmed one by one as medical systems recalibrated. For the first time in days, the ship felt less like a tomb and more like a sanctuary. Dr. Aaron Cole lay unconscious on a stretcher, his suit still sealed but cracked with wear. Alien medics surrounded him, their hands trembling as they removed his helmet. The air hissed free, and his face was revealed, pale, drawn, and streaked with exhaustion. He looked like a man who had walked through fire and come out burned but unbroken. The council gathered in the observation deck. Their voices hushed. They had prepared for destruction. They had readied weapons to erase the nursery, believing death was the only shield left of them. But now, 200 cubs breathed, saved not by fleets or technology, but by one stubborn human who refused to leave them behind. Guardian, one council member whispered, the alien word rolling softly from their tongue. Others repeated it. Soon the chamber echoed with the title, not spoken as debate, but as reverence. The cubs themselves stirred, many now strong enough to sit up. Their bright eyes, once dim with fever, followed the human doctor as he was carried past them. Some reached out tiny hands. Weak fingers brushed his arm as he passed, as if clinging to the anchor who had pulled him back from the abyss. Cole's eyes flickered open briefly. He saw those hands, those faces, and a faint smile crossed his cracked lips. Told you, you're not alone, he whispered. Then sleep claimed him again. News of the event spread faster than light. Across Veari space, families wept when they heard their cubs lived. Across alien empires, whispers grew about the disease, about the sabotage, but most of all about the human who had stood against it. The council convened in private chambers aboard the ship. Their robes heavy with shame, they spoke of their failure. We were ready to burn them. One admitted, we chose fear, while the human chose hope. Another said, he saw what we could not, that this was not nature, but a weapon. We were blind. The council leader, usually proud and unyielding, bowed his head. He has shown us a truth we can never forget. If the galaxy survives what is coming, it will be because of him. Outside, Cole was treated in a medical ward. Alien doctors carefully monitored his vitals, shocked at the damage he had endured. Weeks without proper rest. Oxygen deprivation. Starvation balanced only by stimulants. Any other being would have collapsed far sooner. Yet he had endured long enough to deliver salvation. When he awoke fully, days later, the cubs were waiting. The ward doors opened, and dozens of them streamed in, no longer weak, but stumbling with energy. Their caretakers tried to hold them back, but the cubs refused. They swarmed to his bed, climbing carefully, wrapping tiny arms around him. Their bright voices filled the room in a chorus of gratitude. Cole sat upright slowly, tears burning his eyes. The weight of exhaustion still chained him, but the sight of their smiles cut through everything. He ruffled their heads one by one, his voice hoarse but warm. You made it, all of you. One cub looked up at him with shimmering eyes. In halting words of broken human speech, it said, Guardian. The others repeated it. The word spread, louder and louder, until the ward echoed with it. Guardian, Guardian, Guardian. Cole closed his eyes, overwhelmed. He had never sought titles, never wanted praise. But hearing it from their voices, the very ones he had nearly died to protect, shook him to his core. Soon after, the investigation began. The dark particles in the cub's blood were traced back to a rival species, one known for ruthless ambition. It was no plague of nature, but a deliberate strike, meant to erase a generation of Veari before it could grow. The council declared it an act of war. Fleets mobilized, alliances trembled, and for the first time, the galaxy turned its gaze not on politics or empires, but on one human doctor who had uncovered the truth. Cole was summoned before the council once more. He walked slowly into the chamber, still recovering, his steps unsteady but his back straight. The leaders rose as he entered, an honor reserved for the greatest of their kind. Dr. Cole, the council leader said, his voice solemn, you came when no one else would. You faced what we feared, and in doing so, you saved not only our children, but our honor. From this day forward, the Veari recognize you as guardian of the future. Cole shifted uncomfortably under the weight of their words. I'm just a doctor, he said softly. I did what anyone should have. No, the leader replied. You did what none of us could. The chamber filled with the sound of agreement, a tide of voices acknowledging him. Cole bowed his head, not for himself, but for the cubs. Later, aboard his small shuttle, Cole prepared to depart. He had no taste for politics, no hunger for titles. He wanted only to return to quiet stars, to his small station where the work of healing never ended. Yet as he stepped aboard, the Cubs and their families gathered at the docks. Thousands of eyes followed him. Their voices rose, not in sorrow this time, but in song, an alien melody that carried gratitude deeper than words. Cole paused, his chest tightening. He raised a hand in farewell. The song followed him as he launched into space, echoing long after the engines faded. In the records of the galaxy, the event became legend. The day the nursery ship was saved. The day one human doctor stood between life and death and chose life. The day the word guardian was forever tied to humanity. But for Aaron Cole, it was simpler. When asked by his peers why he risked everything, why he endured when even fleet stood back, his answer never changed. Because they were children, and children deserve a chance to grow. The galaxy remembered. Empires whispered of the stubborn, reckless bravery of humankind. Enemies began to fear them not for their fleets or weapons, but for the will that burned in their hearts. Allies saw them as something more than newcomers. They saw them as protectors. And across countless stars, in the years that followed, the story of a human guardian was told to children before bed. They learned of the man who walked into a plague alone, who refused to leave the weak behind, who gave 200 alien cubs back their future. In time, the cubs grew. They became leaders, scholars, explorers, and wherever they went, they carried a piece of him within them. Dr. Aaron Cole never asked for monuments. He never sought glory. But the galaxy gave it to him anyway. And though he returned to his quiet station, treating patients one by one, he knew in his heart that somewhere across alien worlds, the word guardian was still whispered with reverence, not because he was stronger or smarter or braver than others, but because when all others turned away, he stayed. And that, above all, was the story humanity left to the stars.